welcome to Spark Talks. This is the podcast where we talk about all of the things that we do at Spark. Today we're going to be talking about strategic insights and data analysis. My name is Vanessa, and I am the marketing manager at Spark. I'm joined here by Shane, who is VP of Strategic Insights.
Hey, Vanessa. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
And Alex is our senior analyst in the same department.
Hey, Vanessa. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. First podcast ever.
Yeah, first podcast ever for me, too. Exciting.
Welcome. So I'm going to start off really simple. Why are you two qualified to be on a podcast?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, we'll use the term qualified very loosely here in the respect that, I think I would say that I'm qualified to be on the podcast because I do have a little bit of experience on radio from being a DJ at KUCI at UC Irvine. We had a late night radio show about kind of hip hop music and things like that. So I have a little bit of experience there, and I guess I'll pass the mic over to Alex.
Yeah, I think I'm overly experienced here. I think I have way too much experience to be a part of this podcast. Really, high school morning announcements really sums it up from my experience. Also, hosting my senior class's talent show under the same title as our morning announcements. My friend and I, Ian, we did WRBR, Red Button Radio, out of Escanaba Senior High School in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where no one knows where that is.
Escanaba High football rocks.
Woo, Eskimos.
And I'll just throw in there that I am qualified because I did the health segment on my elementary school broadcasting morning announcements.
Awesome.
Wow, the health segment at elementary school. That's amazing. What kind of things
in
do you
elementary
The
school?
food groups, of course.
Oh, very good.
Grains.
Legumes.
Coffee.
Coffee. For
Dairy.
elementary school, sure. Eggplant.
I was all about the reverse pyramid, like sweets and stuff at the bottom,
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't really make sense.
Okay, please let me know, why do strategic insights matter?
I guess I'll take the first stab at this one. Just thinking about strategic insights in general. When we talk about insights, we talk about the information that we're able to pull out of our various sources of data. So, we observe the data, we observe what's happening, and then we're able to kind of extrapolate those insights, and then we call it strategic insights because we apply those insights to program strategy. So a lot of what we do has to do with data analysis, but really I think anybody can kind of pull data together. So being able to analyze data in the context of a public relations world, in the world of social media, in the world of marketing strategy. We're able to make some pretty key observations, and then we work closely with our account teams to help apply that to program strategy. And then we also, like to use those data insights in order to show program performance, and to measure program performance. So being able to, like I said, analyze the data and then apply that to program strategy is really kind of the cornerstone of the Strategic Insights department.
So we do these strategic insights here at Spark, but why does a business want strategic insights? How does it help them further their business objectives and goals?
We definitely apply, strategic insights and recommended program strategy to our client programs. So, I think it's a good question because you started talking about, kind of business value, business objectives, and that's exactly what we shoot for. We really want to understand what drives the client's business. So when we, execute program strategy, we want to make sure that it is supporting their goals and objectives as a business. And then, even kind of secondarily comes that to, the successes within the program itself. So, the placements we might have been getting in a traditional program, or, the level of engagements we might be getting from a strategic program, or some of the return we're getting on investment for paid media strategies. So there's a lot of areas that we can measure the actual programs themselves, but we certainly want to be highly tuned into what drives our clients' business success. And so I think to your question, I think that's really where that kind of falls in, is keeping that in mind constantly throughout the process.
So do we do this for ourselves at Spark?
You're the marketing manager. You tell me. No, of course we do. We do this at some level for Spark. I'd have to say that we certainly put our clients first. It's always, it's not exactly one of those situations to where the cobbler's kids don't have shoes on. We certainly are making a concerted, dedicated effort to apply much of our, the strategies we recommend to our clients for ourselves. But at the same time, as I mentioned, we certainly always put our clients ahead of ourselves, as it's really all about them.
We can collect so much data now that the challenge has shifted to choosing which angles to analyze and then turning that analysis into actionable advice. How do you tackle these challenges on a brand new client?
You can measure everything, and a lot of people will have this problem, especially marketers, when they're saying to themselves, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed with all this data. What do I measure? Do I measure creative? Do I measure Google Analytics? Do I measure performance? Do I measure like the click, a like, a favorite, a comment? Like what's valuable? And it's really going back to your fundamental business objectives, your marketing objectives, and your communications objectives. And once you set those objectives, you make sure they're measurable. For example, say one of your business objectives as a client is to raise your CEO's thought leadership platform. So maybe one of your tactics would be, we're going to do a Twitter series of thought leadership around your CEO. So then based on that objective and those tactics and strategy, you're going to set up a metric, say, okay, we're going to do this campaign across Twitter. We're going to see his performance and then see from the performance, how is that tracking back to maybe inbound requests or something, for example, or the spread of his content across the social sphere to influencers, to other brands, to mentions in the media, to the press. So then we're kind of measuring really that, I guess they call it, I don't know, not really dark social, but things like how it's just shared across, and then making sure like how direct that is. So then from being direct to your objectives, you're really able to connect the dots for your client and really show your value much more as an agency than just kind of shooting in the dark and not really being able to measure those objectives and really how you're adding value to the client.
And just to tack onto that, I think one of the biggest differences that, I think where Spark can really stand apart from a lot of, other agencies out there that might be trying to solve some of the same challenges for other clients is the fact that we always approach our clients as strategic partners. We don't look at them as, a client who just has a few specific goals that they're trying to meet. We really look at them as strategic partners to our business. So their success is our success. So we really pour ourselves and everything into, whatever's going to identify and drive that success for our clients from a business perspective. And then that really helps in, in just us being deeper in with our clients' successes and really kind of helping them see new ground and different places they can go versus, I've been a part of even other agencies, even in the Bay Area, that really kind of just look at clients as, a way to get through, a few things in a program, get through, some calls, get through, whatever it is, just to make it to the next month or the next quarter, but really not thinking about clients as strategic partners. And I think that's a big difference for Spark, and that's really why I'm excited to be part of this agency.
Great. We've had a couple of episodes published in our Agile Narrative series, and I was wondering, how can you use strategic insights to shape a brand's narrative?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we have our narrative program where we really help clients kind of see where they might be able to drive their brand and kind of be that signal through much of the noise that's out there, potentially in their category and just in the media in general. And so when we work closely with our clients in order to identify some of those areas of opportunity, it's a very visionary approach. And so when you marry that with real data, that's coming out of, performance within the media across the landscape, within social media, et cetera, it really kind of validates everything, that we're trying to do, or actually uncovers a lot of new opportunities we hadn't recognized, initially. And so, another thing that I think that really lets Spark kind of shine above, many other agencies is not only do we have the experience and expertise from an agency that's been around, basically almost 20 years, and we've got, a lot of really great industry veterans here that know, many spaces very well and know, sophisticated media relations program strategies, and also we've got some great visionaries, and so kind of putting those together and then validating all of our approaches or uncovering new approaches through data and kind of meeting at the middle provides not only that, like I mentioned, that vision and that experience, that expertise, but also that real right now actionable data, and we put all those together into a very unique program that, as I mentioned, I haven't even seen at any other agency. So again, I think this is something that really sets Spark apart from the rest.
Yeah, I mean, not only are we using more innovative techniques to kind of help a client find their quote unquote white space, which you hear a lot, very used wide agency term, like social media listening, digital analytics, media analysis, all of these things using digital landscape to kind of see how the client's currently positioned, how their competitors are positioned, and then how you want to kind of pivot the company and their narrative to find that white space. So not only are we using more innovative techniques, quote unquote, but we can also rely on more historical research methods like quantitative surveys and focus groups to kind of really understand the client's audience and prospective audience and really understand how those audiences segment out. So you're making sure that your messaging and your brand that you come out with, and then you test that brand in these specific target audiences to whatever demographic you really want. If it's, wide, general population audience, if it's more B2B, if you're focused on the C-suite, C-level executives, having a very robust survey can really help you understand your audience segments and making sure that your messages really resonate with them. So then when you do launch your narrative, you will be successful. And then going back to kind of measuring that success and benchmarking the success and making sure you're always evaluating the program and the narrative that we do launch at Spark to make sure it does continue to be successful and the client, does see value. And then when the next narrative has to happen, the next story, like the narrative never ends, but every brand has a different iteration being multiple stories that make up their narrative.
Right. I think that's Alex brought, some really good points to that, and just explaining kind of narrative and how it relates to data analytics and program strategy, well-informed program strategy. We've brought up, probably a few points that, a lot of our listeners might be familiar with, and we probably brought up some points you might have not been familiar with. So I encourage anyone that's listening to this podcast, if you have any questions, comments, something specific for Alex and I, something for Vanessa who manages the marketing of Spark, feel free to tweet us. We love to engage any of our listeners. It's a great way to, if you hear anything on the podcast that you want us to expand on, or you have any questions, or you're curious what this might look like for your brand if you're listening, feel free to give us a tweet. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll look to get back to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's at Spark PR. It sounds to me like a lot of companies will go through this narrative process and get really excited and say, yeah, we want to change the world. That's part of our narrative. And then when they go out to execute on their narrative, it gets a little tricky because they've been thinking so high level. It sounds like the data analysis and the strategic insights give them a more concentrated approach on how to execute on that narrative. And then when you execute, then you can evaluate, like you were saying, and you'll know where to go instead of being in a big, huge sea.
Yeah, that's a great way to break it down. Absolutely. I just real quick just want to chime in on that and saying that one of the great things about not only that we do data analytics, but the way that we do it allows us to really analyze a competitive landscape, a group of brands out there that might be competing for the same audience or might be getting lumped together by the media, right? And so what we're able to do is kind of take a look at those group of brands, take a look at what's driving their traditional media coverage, what's driving their online social engagement, what within those, and we'll look at that from a historical landscape, and we can go back, years if we need to. But what we try to understand is, kind of just the basic organic building blocks of within that category. What are the maybe 10 main initiatives that really drive coverage? And to Alex's point, understanding those and keeping those as the organic building blocks of the program strategy, it frees up our teams to do that kind of free space, white space thinking that allows us to kind of identify, types of campaigns or type of, activations or strategies that might allow us to, like I said, kind of create that signal above all the noise and rise above. But, to your point, Vanessa, you're talking about, like oftentimes visionary things, you want to change the world. It seems like a massive mountain to move, right? But when you're able to kind of use data analytics to kind of break that down into manageable building blocks, that mountain doesn't seem so big anymore. In fact, it just kind of comes down to, like I said, like manageable almost boulders that you can kind of roll around wherever you want. You put them in the right place, and then you're able to kind of stand on top of those and kind of see where new opportunities are. So I hope that probably answered the question a little bit.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit in our interview for our blog post. It's called Meet a Sparkster, Shen Alex, if you want the background. But I wanted to bring it up in a little bit more specific way because you guys really got into this question last time, which is, Do you see data analysis becoming ubiquitous across all facets of business and even life, for that matter, as opposed to being this separate activity we perform in a separate department?
Sure. I think, and like you mentioned, we talked about this a little bit before the podcast and a few days back. And I think we had some pretty fun kind of answers for you. And I think one of the ways that we approach that answer is like what life might be like in 5, 10, or 20 years from now when we, consider how kind of data that's circling around our businesses and our lives might, kind of inform how we operate as businesses and as human beings, And so...
No, I think if you're thinking about how the marketing cycle works, I mean, marketing answers what consumers want, and then consumers answering what marketing wants. So where we are right now, it's kind of like a give and take. So consumers love having all of these kind of different data points in their life that lets them measure things. Right now data is very sexy, which was never a thing. Like no one really cared.
Hashtag sexy data.
Yeah, sexy data hashtag. Yeah. But that's new. Like no one really cared about data. You're talking about marketing, everything was done by a gut feeling. I mean, consumers never really cared about data, like whatever. I mean, really there wasn't that much available data out there before the web and before digital. If you think about just like press and media and news. I mean, what else did you have than people actually subscribing and circulation to the New York Times? Like that really was the data you had. Very broad demographics, male, female, between the ages of like 18 and 30, and then like 30 and 45, and some very broad survey data. But now we are immersed in data everywhere, and everybody is sucking it up no matter what. And especially as we get kind of like this distinction between the people who really hesitate about giving access to their data, the Edward Snowdens and those kind of people in the world, like nothing against that, but that's just that mentality. Like we have to be careful about how much data that we give people because you never know about how your privacy might be violated. I feel like that idea of privacy may become something that is going away, especially if I think of myself and I think of a lot of other probably millennials who really grew up with giving their data at the touch of a button. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, like we don't care, like it's out there, whatever. And the also mentality that, if an entity wants your information, they will get it, and there's no way
like
of
how
stopping
many we were just talking about this the other day, how many times do you sign, yes, I accept this disclosure agreement or whatever, and like how many times you've actually ever read that? Like
I heard on NPR recently
there was
that
a really interesting study.
they
Shankar
studied it
Raghunathan,
and found out that if you read all of the agreements that you agree every day, 40 minutes a day to read it.
And then in that clause, they had put like the first child clause where if you sign this, then you had to give your firstborn to this agency, and only one person out of the group actually read it. Like it's amazing, but it also kind of epitomizes of how we live. So if you're thinking about that, and if you think about the new people being born into our society and really giving up access to data, then really marketing will shift to embolize how the consumer wants to live their life. If we don't care about giving up data, the marketer's going to keep on getting all this data, and then therefore we're going to have more personalized marketing and have more personalized experiences, and everything is going to live, as we talked about in the interview, like this single-dimensional plane, this kind of augmented reality. But it's going to be reality where all of this data is going to fuel your entire life and every decision that you make, where you eventually may not realize that there's a separate decision being made that you just might think, oh, I'm making this decision. It's not just like, oh, I've done a bunch of research, had a bunch of data, now I'm making a decision.
Who's to say that that's not happening now? Who's to say we're not living in a computer simulation right now?
Matrix. Total Recall is going to be real. I mean, if you think about also the human fundamental of like survival of the fittest, and we want to live as long as possible and do everything we can to live, why would we ever want to eventually put ourselves in risk of going on a vacation and injuring ourselves or whatever, when we could live that experience virtualized?
To be honest, I mean, depending on how things go and all that, like we very well could be living in a Skynet-type society, you know what I mean? And basically the whole premise behind that is that, artificial intelligence, which is, really turning the corner now, and machine learning and all of that starts to get to a point to where, I mean, obviously the fantasy in the movie is that in Terminator is that the machines become self-aware. But at what point, we are pushing machines to become self-aware today. So at what point does that actually turn the corner, and what point does that actually, impact human beings in our daily lives and even how businesses are run? So I think it's certainly interesting things to think about. And for right now, I think we have to use the best and brightest resources we have around us in order to constantly be striving to new and exciting things that can really resonate with our clients' target customers.
In our last interview, Shane, you mentioned that you were surprised we weren't doing this already, that machines are not writing all of our content for us based on research and being connected to all these different systems. And I was wondering, I personally wonder this as an artist, what happens to way out of left field creativity, just things that nobody expected to happen that are highly successful?
I always thought that if we have these kind of measurement engines that know what type of content is most successful, when, down to the character length, down to the tone, we've got natural language processing. I mean, I don't understand, really why there isn't a system that's built right now that analyzes all that, understands your company, its core business objective, what it wants to accomplish, and then is able to just create content that comes out through all of your communications channels without a human behind it. Think about and just factor in SEO perspectives, factor in, everything you want to say about your company, all of those things. Sure, there would be some form of element, some human element in order to potentially connect a few of the dots, but I don't understand why there isn't a technology today that basically writes every single blog post, every social communication, every press release, everything for you. I mean, that could totally be automated. It's just, I feel like that, maybe we're a little fearful as humans to kind of let the machines take over at that level, but at the same time, when you're looking at data, you're looking at, what do the results say and what should you do next? It shouldn't have to take a human to do that, right? So that's kind of one thing. And then I think, you brought up something else that was really interesting. What about things that kind of come out left field that are wildly successful? I don't know, let's say the Old Spice commercials or the Dollar Shave Club commercial, right? I mean, you couldn't really have you could have planned that at some level, but I'm sure they must have put some paid dollars behind it to get it to take off, right? There were great, highly well-produced pieces of content, and there's just some random ones that just came to memory right now. But at the same time, you can't, a lot of people say that you can't create something that's automatically going to go viral. It needs to go viral on its own, and it needs to be kind of within a certain time and place. And there's a lot of other factors going on in the world that make that one thing viral. I don't know. Let's just do a quick little survey. What's the last viral thing that you saw?
The one I remember the most recent is Puppy Monkey Baby Super Bowl ad.
Even stuff is going viral today right now, quote unquote. Stuff about Drake trying to kiss Rihanna at the VMAs and her backing away. You know what I mean? It's I don't know, how do you define all that?
Celebrity is not fair. You're talking about viral. Anything that celebrity does.
I think just to circle back through all of this a little bit and kind of tie it back a little bit, I think one of the things that I found super interesting that I love to play it, and I forget what it's called to play with it. I forget what it's called, but Google invented it, and is it Deep Blue or something like that, where you put an image and then it does a completely randomized, very psychotropic,
it does an algorithm over and over and over again to find
and it brings
images.
very much randomness into something like that wouldn't technically be done through a straight just data type program or something like that, and it had to be something that would be influenced completely out of left field, like you're mentioning. And then when you have that, that creates the kind of it creates the environment for something to be that different kind of creative. I've never seen something like that before, and gives it the opportunity to take off from a viral nature.
Yeah, I could see a computer being allowed to, at certain intervals, pull in something.
But it's still
totally
a program.
unrelated.
As much as it's quote unquote random, how random, quote unquote, could a computer ever be? Because it's been programmed, and it is a program.
That's the point of machine learning, right?
Yeah, what I mean is that it would pull an element in that is not within the parameters it was programmed to do, and then experiment with that.
Right. And then it's how does that even come about? You know what I mean? How random could it possibly
That's right,
be?
because we were talking about in the car when we were talking about self-driving cars, and how Elon Musk said that the only way for self-driving cars to take off is if it had a perfect record, right? And then Shane, you were well, how it's not going to have a perfect record. It's something that we built and we programmed. How would it be perfect? And then it comes to the definition of what's perfect. 1 in a million, 1 in a trillion accidents. Like, how do we define perfect versus how does a computer define perfect? And
I mean, I don't think there's anything that ever could possibly be 100% perfect.
Do you guys have anything else you want to add?
Talking about data in our daily lives and things like that. So we were driving over to the Emeryville office here from the city, and we were listening to Sarah and Vinny in the morning. Shout out Sarah and Vinny. So we were listening to them, and they were just come up with like random stuff or whatever, just to chat about. And so one of the things they came up with was, of all the words that are in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, I guess the dictionary released either on social and blog or something, like
ask
asking
for people's opinions, like what are the most offensive words?
Right, most offensive words. And so and I'm sure that they just wanted some normal responses or whatever for words that people just don't like to see that are in the dictionary, or something, words that kind of rub them wrong, if you will. And so obviously, it started going well for a while, and I guess they mentioned that it really got taken over by a bunch of people commenting about, more things that are more politically driven. So like, right, things that are racist, or things that are like, radical, or, whatever that have to do with like, zealous like religions and things like that. And so, but, pulling all of that kind of out of it. And again, we're talking about data in our lives. And so it's interesting how, they're using data like this just to, create content for their radio program. And then lo and behold, some of the words that Alex and I use probably on a daily basis ended up becoming on some of the most hated words. So, I think that for us tells us that we actually love the words that we're using, and we're glad that it, gets under people's skin. Yeah, moist is actually on the top of our list. That's probably
That's
a word.
Offensive?
We use the word moist probably 25 times a day.
Please.
Uncomfortable.
Moist. Like panties was the other word.
That was another one.
What was another one?
Vomit or something like that was another one. So, but I
guess moist. Well, moist is fricative.
Yeah, people don't like that. My wife
Moist.
definitely doesn't like moist. A lot of people have expressed that they don't like moist. I thought for sure it'd be more bad.
But it's all about
words.
the content of moist, right? Like,
right,
you can, like if you're like, oh, that's moist. It's like, oh,
like
but
the
if you're
chicken is
about,
moist, the cake
baking,
is moist. Yeah, I mean that's
this
awesome.
is like a super moist cupcake.
Yeah, that's
like
a good
apparently
thing.
that's okay.
Like a cupcake might be on on the moistometer. It might be like a 7 or an 8.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
But I mean, like,
whereas
after like a long workout at the gym, you're like pushing a 12 or something.
Right.
And if you're like, damn, I'm moist. People be like,
you can be super
oh,
moist. And
like,
that's
I'm a moist cupcake.
When we think about data, what's the moistest type of data? And I think that really kind of dovetails into sexy data, right? And so that's really the theme of not only our department in this podcast, but really our lives to some level.
Like moist data visuals. Like what data visuals get you
dripping with binary code? Like ones and zeros are just falling like out of like the crevice, like from the ceiling or from the wall. Like it's just like, you remember that? What is the scene where like the walls start bleeding? Or like, here, how about this? How about no, The
Shining.
The Shining, is that the one with the guy with the axe? Yeah, Jack Nicholson. And so like the blood's coming down the hallway. Like that is a moist scene.
Yeah.
Did you know that you can actually buy that carpet? I don't know if you can like visualize it, but it's like red with like these green kind of honeycomb interlocking like design pattern on it. You can actually buy that carpet for your house or for like a bedspread or whatever. I mean, I love stuff like that because it's like kind of obscure. And so somebody that was really like a big fan of like Stanley Kubrick or like that movie would really get it. Oh, by the way, if anybody's listening, go check out the Stanley Kubrick exhibit at the Jewish Contemporary. I haven't done it myself. I want to check it out. So that'll be something.
Lo and behold, their Twitter handle is @Jewseum.
@Jewseum. That's amazing. If anybody is listening to this podcast and has been to that exhibit or even the Jewseum, please let us know, because I'd love to know how your experience was with
It's
it.
a neologism. Toby would love it.
It is a neologism, and Toby would love that. And I would
They
probably
do have some pretty
think
bomb-ass matzo ball soup in there, too.
moist. We talked about some things, kind of here and there, and just want to encourage anyone who's listening to send us, a tweet or give us a message on any of our social platforms. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment on the blogs. Any of that would be great, and we'd love to just engage our community and respond with any questions or comments that
if
you
there's
might
any
have.
measurement topics or communication measurement topics, marketing, advertising, whatever you want us to talk about on our next Strategic insight.
And hey, if you are looking for an agency representation, be it for public relations, marketing strategy, anything within that, why don't you head and give us a call, mention my name, and we will run a free category analysis report for you on your industry to show you what those organic building blocks of your category might be. So again, tweet us. Mention Shane, and we will run a category analysis for you for free.
Sounds great. Thanks for being on the podcast,
All right,
guys.
thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa.
Thanks, Vanessa.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Get that Mont Blanc out and see the bottom line rise. Spark.